Start out today, basic cryptography with the objectives to define cryptography, again, back to week 1 of course 1. We've already kind of talked about this when you talked about you research the CIA and the AAA, confidentiality, integrity, availability, and then authentication, authorization, and auditing. Describe hashing. And you talked about hashing. I don't know that anybody actually did. I got a little demo, and it was in the WebQuest of what a hash looks like, and we'll look at that. What does a hash do for you? A hash is the thing that gives you the confidence of the integrity that it hasn't changed en route. It also can give you the confidence that it is from the author, is that the author or the sender is actually validated in a digital signature. Digital signatures use hashing to a certain extent to help with that. Basic symmetric cryptographic algorithms. We're not going to pick on Adam again. Did they ask on the Security Plus test the algorithms, which one's DES, triple DES? Those kinds of things. And I think what you'll find out is they really generally want you to distinguish between what's symmetric and what's asymmetric. And if you look at this, and if you look at these things and make yourself a little table, I think you're going to find that most of them are symmetric algorithms, and we'll talk about why. Well, we can talk about why right now. The reason is symmetric algorithms are a lot quicker, up to 1,000 times faster than an asymmetric algorithm. So they take a whole lot less resource. The trick becomes, how do you get a symmetric algorithm to, let's say 10,000 people securely? Because what if you shared your pre-shared key for your wireless access point, or in Chris's case, can I pick on you? What if your neighbor shared the pre-shared key with, let's say 10 people? What are the odds of keeping it a secret? So how are you going to get a pre-shared key, a symmetric key, to make the encryption and the decryption quicker to, let's say 10,000, 100,000, million people? HTTPS something or another. You really would kind of like for that to be secure when you send your credit card information to the remote location. How does that happen? And that's kind of a process that you should have there so that you can say, oh yeah, this really is secure and this is why it's secure. How asymmetric cryptography works, lists the types of files and file system, types of file and file systems of cryptography. We're going to talk about, this is where they mention PGP, pretty good privacy, the Windows encrypted file system. The Windows encrypting file system got a lot of bad publicity initially in Windows 2000. It actually works pretty well now. The point I really want to make is when you use cryptography and you use keys in Windows, certificates in Windows, please be sure you make a copy of them, because those things are stored in your profile in Windows. Hidden portion of the profile, but they're stored in your profile. Not really a hidden portion, but a secured portion of your profile. If your profile gets deleted and your certificates get deleted, you have a bunch of really cool encrypted files that are really cool encrypted files that are not very useful because they're really cool encrypted files. You don't have any way to decrypt them. You can always export these things, and please remind me to show you at the end here how you do that. You can do it through Internet Explorer. It's a real simple process to import and export the cryptographic keys. Yes?
You change your password on your username?
That's okay. If you change your password, it's okay. If the administrator resets your password, you may lose those certificates. What I would personally do, and what I try to personally do, is every time I install a certificate, I make a copy of the certificate. Put it on your flash drive that you keep in your pocket all the time. If you always have control of it, then you always have control of the public key and the private key. The private key being a really big deal on this thing. You want to put it someplace that you can always get it. Originally, when these things came out with encrypted file system and recovery agents, because what happens if you encrypt something and all of a sudden you get hit by a bus and you're in the hospital for 6 weeks, and there's an encrypted file that really absolutely got to have, let's say, to conduct payday. What's going to happen? We can in Windows designate a recovery agent who can also decrypt the files. And the answer to there was, during floppy days, is to put that certificate, put those keys on a floppy disk and lock the floppy disk up and then delete the keys from the individual machine, so that if you ever needed to do that, you could go and put the key back on a machine and decrypt the file. Kind of interesting, and we'll look at what this thing does whenever you do encryption. Each of these things is kind of interesting. It's like, well, why do we have all this other stuff if this is the way you're going to do it? Explain how whole disk encryption works, and this has become a really bigger deal with people stealing laptops and getting information. And the book starts out talking about the one that I was personally involved in, with the laptop got stolen and a whole bunch of veterans records as well as active duty records. What is it, 23 million or something like that? What's the number there? 26.5 million records, 26.5 million veterans and active duty military were involved in this. And they sent you a letter in the mail. The reason they only sent a letter in the mail was they found the laptops after they sent the letters. It was kind of interesting when the VA secretary was testifying before the Senate. He said, we don't have 26 million envelopes. How do you send 26 million letters? I mean, even that's a big task. That's going to cost a lot of money. And they had, if they had not found that laptop, had talked about buying the insurance for identity theft, identity fraud insurance for everybody for a year, which would have been an even bigger expense that the government would have had to have paid for. They did find the laptop. As a couple of teenagers, they weren't interested in the records. All they wanted to do was sell the laptop for $200 and go party. That's when that's why they only got two. I got a letter too. Said that your information may have been compromised. So had those disks been encrypted, could you have felt more secure about that? And then they've got another little article in there about how after those things happened, the government went in and made a contract for disk encryption software to do that. But then after that, and they allow all government agencies, federal government agencies, state government agencies, schools, to buy this at reduced prices, like $10 a license for a $100 piece of software, something like that. And then after that happens, they got 3 more unencrypted laptops stolen. PGP, I think you will see, has a whole disk encryption ability. Windows 7 has a whole disk encryption ability. Do you want to do that? I don't know the answer.
Slow your drive down.
Now, so you don't encrypt. The answer to that's maybe. And I guess the answer to that is, if it does slow your drive down, which do you want? Security or speed? I'll go back to day one. There's no killer app for security. Security is a constant balancing act. Anytime that we encrypt something, it's going to slow it down. If we encrypt something that goes across the network, it's going to slow it down. If we encrypt it going across a router, if we create a VPN, it's going to slow down the traffic, because that traffic's got to be encrypted and it's got to be decrypted. That's going to take CPU cycles. That's going to slow things down. So what do you need to encrypt and what don't you need to encrypt? And that's a really excellent question. The answer is maybe. What are you encrypting? Are you encrypting everything in the whole disk? You may want to do that, but it may be the data disk and not the OS disk. So what don't you want to? It's always going to be a balancing act between security and usability. We can make our computers pretty darn secure, I think. What if Sam turned off his laptop and put it in a safe deposit box? Would it be fairly secure? Wouldn't be absolutely secure, but it'd be fairly secure. But it also wouldn't be very useful. He'd have a heck of a time playing StarCraft in that vault in the 15 minutes a week that he was allowed in there or whatever it is. So what is and what isn't useful, what is and what isn't secure. You're going to be taking risks. Anytime you put data in front of the public or even in front of the employees, are you guys a threat to our network? Maybe? I say you can be, exactly. Are you becoming a bigger threat to our network? As you get through with this course, I hope so. But I hope that you don't actually carry out the threat that you could. Could you've looked at some of the surveillance, you looked at a couple of the analysis things on Wireshark. It's not as easy a problem or as easy of a situation as you might think in most of these cases. Man-in-the-middle attacks. How easy is it to do a man-in-the-middle attack? Easy! Did anybody get Mr. Geiss's password yet? Doing a man-in-the-middle attack? Huh? That was Chris. Yeah, did you get it yet?
I haven't tried.
Haven't tried? What was the limitation for the man-in-the-middle attacks? How far did he go? You may be on his subnet. Can you get on his subnet? You don't even know where his subnet is. That's all part of the, what are we going to do? We've subnetted the building. How do you get onto his subnet? Where does his subnet go? I'm not even sure I know that. Chris should know that. Which ports are available there? Keylogger, go ahead. Go ahead. When are you going to do that? When are you going to do that?
I don't have one.
Oh, okay.
Well, you could.
You could. Very likely.
I don't know. Think about it. He said to you, the back of the machines, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he would know. I was saying, well, Mr. Geis, I'll tell you what, man.
And what's going to happen when it says, oh, your new USB device has been installed?
No. For his keyboard.
For his keyboard. You don't think that's going to show up when you put that keylogger in there, that a USB device, something's happened? Hmm?
I thought they made them so that they wouldn't pop up and install.
I don't know how you install stuff on Windows without it saying that it just installed this thing.
Let me buy one and we'll find out. Yeah, all the ones online are like,
No, yeah.
They won't install anything.
Yeah, I know. I think one of the tricks to that is that you need to be able to get into those locations. Why don't you buy us one and find out? To get into those locations, that would be an interesting thing. I'll see if I can get school to buy one. Probably know the answer to that, but we'll see that. One of the tricks to that is that you want those things to happen when the user's not there. When is the user not there?
When he goes to lunch.
When he goes to lunch? What about when he goes home for the evening? You got all sorts of time to do that, don't you? Oh, golly, well, you got to have somebody, find somebody's got a key, huh?
So now we've brought social engineering.
No, now we brought social engineering into it. Is this whole thing one big education protection cycle? Has anybody found the killer app for security yet? I know you're looking for it. The ONOFS switch is probably the one killer app. Take this panel out. What now? Take that panel out. Jump up.
Go down, come out on the other side of it.
That probably would work. But that's all part of the physical security issue that you're going to be addressing. Should we have these things?
You have a physical firewall.
Physical firewall. What if you take that panel out and golly, this ceiling goes all the way up to the roof? It doesn't, but what if it did? I don't think this one does. Some of the walls do and some of the walls don't. Depends on whether they were part of the original structure or whether they were part of what we put in when they broke the what actually was, and this probably was part of the original NOC, the library, which is just on the other side here was, and it was one big room, had a mainframe in it. So this used to be, I don't know which bank, but one of the bank's data centers. That's why it had the fence and all that other stuff that is no longer here. Cryptography, understanding what it is and what it can do. What is cryptography? What, in your mind, what's cryptography? Encryption and decryption. World War II. Well, I mean, there were lots of things. Did you ever, the Enigma machine, that was the big thing that helped us out in World War II, right? Who cracked the Enigma machine? Interestingly enough, if you watch some of the stuff, it was the Poles. And they got it out of Poland just before Germany invaded. What did that allow them to do, the Enigma machine? Encrypt and decrypt. The other guys encrypted traffic. Except for the Navy. The Navy did another round of encryption. The Army did like a single round. The Navy did a little bit different encryption. It took them longer to break the code for the naval units than it did for the Army units. So, what if understanding how cryptography can be used as a security tool to protect data? If we encrypt something, does that mean that it is secure forever? No. It means it's secure until somebody can intercept it and decrypt it, just like the Enigma machine. What happened to it? Well, they had the machine and they were able to use those codes in order to decrypt that information. Cryptography, the science of transforming information into unintelligible form while it's being transmitted or stored so that unauthorized users cannot access it. Anybody ever actually seen what an encrypted piece of anything is? What does it really look like? Nothing. Nothing. The science of transferring information into unintelligible form, and it really is gibberish. My word, good word, bad word, and different word. But unintelligible information. The difference between hashing and encryption is? Hashing is one way. Encryption, anything can be encrypted, can be decrypted. Uses keys to do that. Steganography hides the existence of data. One of the original ways that steganography was used, and this was going to be relatively slow, is during the days of slaves and so on, and messages, they'd shave the head, tattoo the message onto the bald head, and then regrow hair. And then when it got to the location, they'd shave the head again and the message would be there. So steganography is hiding something inside something, and then the little lab that you have, I think there's an MP3 file, and well, no, there's an image file, and there's a little document that you can hide something inside something, which is kind of neat.
That was a one-way, right?
What? No. Then you what was a one-way?
Well, once you tattooed their head.
Once you tattooed their head, yeah, but it's true. Unless you had lasers, which they didn't then. To remove the tattoo. That, in fact, was the case. But what are we talking about here is hiding something into something. Technology has come a little bit further than tattooing somebody's head. So now you can put a document file inside a picture. Use the empty space inside the picture to hide the document file. And, in fact, that's what the Russian spies were doing. They were hiding documents inside of documents on websites and sending information that way. There's lots of indications that terrorists are using steganography in order to pass information. Anybody other than me watch NCIS? Huh? Remember the one they were in Gitmo? And they were wondering how they were getting the plans into the prisoners in Gitmo? Steganography, they were hiding it in the movies that they were sending in to the prisoners. Steganography. How are these people doing it? They were hiding the information inside of pictures. They talked about that there was in one of the pictures that they found on a website was a complete plan for, I think it was maybe Hartford, Connecticut airport. So how do you do that? You put something inside of something. That's what you're talking about with steganography. Appears to be a harmless image, can contain hidden data embedded within the image. And one of the things that you get into here is that the image that you put inside, whatever you put inside the image, obviously can't be bigger than, and you may, if you put something too large inside, and you can try that too, if you put something too large inside of it, you damage the resolution. So it comes from a picture to something that's pretty ugly. Can use image files, audio files, and even video files to contain the hidden information. And this is one of the techniques that is actually in use today. The little lab that you have hopefully is going to demonstrate this. Cryptography continued, the message to be hidden, and this is the steganography, hidden by steganography. What it does is uses inside of the message empty space. Each file that's created has empty space in it. And what this thing does is uses that empty space. I think the NCIS one, the way it was solved was, she said, oh, the files are the wrong size. And I think that you're going to find that when you hide these things, it doesn't change the file size because the file size is there. The hidden space counts as part of the file size itself. Pretty kind of interesting technique. And I think you guys talked about Julius Caesar, right? Somebody did, I remember, in the presentations in week 1, course 1. The most famous ancient cryptographer was Julius Caesar. He was the one that used it, and I think that he used the rot 3, the rotate 3, which is move ahead 3 characters. There's a rot 5, rotate 5, where you're going to have 5 characters, and then you have something to decrypt it, obviously. He would send things, and they also used cylinders. They used a number of different things. What they would use is cylinders, and they wrap the paper, whatever they were using, papyrus around the cylinders, and write the message, and then when it got to the other location, you had to have the correct size cylinder in order to actually decrypt the information. So they used a number of different ways to do that. He shifted each letter in his message to his generals 3 places down the alphabet, rotate 3, rotate whatever, a substitution type of cipher. Encryption is changing the original text to a secret message using cryptography, and when we do that, we're going to create something that really is gibberish. It's not just a little bit of gibberish, it's whole pages worth of gibberish in order to do these things. And decryption is when we go in the other direction. We take the encrypted information and bring it back to plain text. And those are the terms that I think you'll see is what? Encrypted and plain text. Plain text, the things that we can read. The process, no big surprise because you've already done the presentation on this. Confidential memo, layoffs at Lakeview store will begin, goes into the encryption algorithm using the key. And what's the key? It's just another string of characters. Anybody ever, just for grins, on an HTTPS site looked at the public key on an HTTPS site? When we say that it's just a bunch of characters, it's a whole bunch of characters. And in the asymmetric, the public key, private key, we have 2 keys, public key and a private key. We'll talk about those in a minute. But we use a key of some sort. Can be a symmetric key, can be an asymmetric key to encrypt the data. It comes out looking, and they always show these nice little short, what it looks like. They're not going to be a nice little short what it looks like. It's going to be a paragraph. For 3 words, it can be a paragraph worth of nonsense, encrypted and decrypted. Transmitted, the ciphertext transmitted as ciphertext gets to the destination, uses a key. If it's a symmetric key, the same at both sides, uses the same key in both locations to decrypt it. If it's an asymmetric public key, private key, it will be encrypted with the public key and decrypted with the private key. We're going to have a couple of slides. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then when it gets here, we get the plain text back. So we got plain text, ciphertext, keys, and algorithms. When we talk about algorithm, what is an algorithm? It's a mathematical process. a high-level mathematical process. Some of the algorithms, like the Revest stuff that's got Revest in it, Ron Revest, who is a math professor at MIT, is a guy that did those.
They say all the time, like, when they're talking about algorithms and whatnot, they're like, this is a high-level algorithm. And I get that, like, it's higher than, like, simple addition, multiplication.
Yes.
But where does high level start?
Where does high level start? And about the level that a mathematics professor at MIT could do.
So, like,
I mean, this is
like physics type math.
no, this is beyond calculus. And a lot of it is the number of times, and they don't want you to know, don't want us to know, and it's beyond my math. I only went through partial differential equations. It's beyond the math that I've had. Do they really want you to know what goes on inside that algorithm? No, because that's part of what makes it difficult to crack. The algorithm's there. Everybody can get the algorithm. It's there. What's the process? It's the understanding of it. Can you crack encryption? Absolutely.
With a lot of time.
With a lot of time. Depends on the algorithm. If you go back to and if you read the book, the DES, which winds up to being like a 56-bit encryption, it's been cracked multiple times. 256-bit encryption's been cracked.
Took a while.
Yeah, it took a supercomputer 4 months.
And now there's like 4096. Which is
Yeah, now there's 40. Now there is the 4096 are huge keys. And what did they get when they cracked that encryption? They got a session key. Got a session key. How good's a session key? How long's a session key good for?
Only good for
That session. So once you hang up, that key's gone. Hopefully these things, but what is the downside? It takes resources in order to do encryption. Do you want to encrypt everything? Oh yeah, we're going to encrypt everything. Well, if you do that, you're really going to slow everything down. Observation that Chris made earlier on. Cryptography can provide basic security protection, protect the confidentiality, protect the integrity, can protect the integrity of information, can help ensure the availability of data just simply by encrypting it and making it available. Can verify the authenticity of the sender, and it can enforce non-repudiation. What's non-repudiation mean? What's repudiation? Non-repudiation means that you can't deny that you did something. If you send me a signed email, you can't really deny that you didn't send that signed email because you signed it. If you sign a check with your physical signature, it's kind of hard to deny that you gave me the $10 in the check because you signed it. All of this stuff can do that. If I sent an unsigned email, is it necessarily from me? You can spoof sender. What if somebody spoofed the header information? And I think you can go into your client and say that you can tell it to tell them that it's from somebody else, and you can have it reply to a different address. So spoofing the header information is something that you can do, huh? I think so. I think Outlook will do that. Ooh. Uh-oh, we're in trouble now. All sorts of thoughts here. So cryptography can enforce all of these things. How would it enforce the authenticity of the sender? How would we do that? Did you ever get signed emails from me? I've stopped sending them because they're stopping them at the firewall. I don't know why, but they are. With the little bow on it? How does it verify the authenticity of the sender? I signed the email with my private key so that you can use your public key and say, oh yeah, that's who it's from. And it said it's from me because I signed up for the certificate. I continue to recommend that you may want to use those things, use certificates, in spite of the fact that here they're apparently filtering. I haven't pursued it as aggressively as I probably should. Because how do you know that the email's from James? Unless he signed it. If he signed it, it could be from him. So what if Sam spoofs James's email header? Say this is from James Wood, and it's not signed. And I say, James always signs his email. I don't think that's from him. If you sign them, then we go back to the non-repudiation and the authenticity. I think in companies, you should do that. I get messages, I get emails from the people at HR that have all this stuff. How do I know? Oh, it says it's from somebody at ecpi.edu. How do I know? I also get junk mail from old cold iron at ecpi.edu. I mean, I get spam from me to me. How do you know it's actually from somebody in the organization? A signing certificate. And by the way, if you want a free signing certificate, you have to renew it every year, but free, go to Komodo.com. They do have a free email signing certificate that you can get there. I think for the price, it's kind of a good deal for the price because it doesn't cost you anything. I used to do the lab, but then they changed Outlook, the web access of Outlook here, so that you can't actually tell it to put those sorts of things into your email. I could do it with mine, but you couldn't because you got to be. They actually changed. They took it out of your web access. So cryptography helps ensure the availability of the data, the integrity of the information, and can protect the confidentiality of the information. This table is in the book, confidentiality. Only authorized parties can view the information. Only be viewed by those who have been provided a key. Ensures that the information is correct, the integrity. Why would we care about the information being correct? What if somebody's in competition with somebody else and they have a meeting and you're supposed to go to give presentations and they intercept the email to you and say, oh, the meeting's at 3 o'clock when the meeting's really at 2 o'clock? What's going to happen? You got an interview and somebody else got an interview for a $500,000 a year job. And I send you an email saying, hey, your interview's been changed to 2 days later. Okay, that's a good idea, call confirm. Well, oh, this guy's too busy to take your call. Would signed emails help in that situation? Signed emails do a couple things. One, the digital signature actually looks at part of the message for integrity. An MD5 edition looks at the whole message and checks for the integrity of it. The availability that it's available only to authorized users and authenticity proof of the genuineness of the user, non-repudiation. You can't deny that you sent it. The user performed the action. Hashing algorithms, symmetric encryption, and asymmetric encryption algorithms are the things that we use. Hashing, one way. Symmetric, pre-shared key. Everybody's got the same pre-shared key. What did it used to be here, 10 nines or 9 nines or something like that? Anybody remember? 10 twos, whatever it was. Pre-shared key. How long could you keep that secret if you really were trying to keep that a secret, do you think? Till you told the first person. Asymmetric encryption algorithms mean that we have two keys. We have a public key. Public key just means just that, public key. Anybody can have it. And a private key that you should protect. And when I talked about exporting keys, you export the private key and keep it private. If you lose control of the private key, you've lost control of your encryption process. And then you need to ask the issuer to revoke that key, which will make everything that's been encrypted with it invalid. Hashing, also called a one-way hash, a process of creating a unique signature for a set of data. This signature is called the hash or the digest to represent the contents of whatever it is. Is used for integrity to ensure that the information is in its original form. No authorized person or malicious software has altered the data. I didn't change the time of the meeting or whatever else in this thing. It's created from a set of data that cannot be reversed. The hash cannot be reversed. Hashing algorithms, and one of the things that they talk about, and this is a good use of a hashing algorithm. What about on your ATM card? How much information is on those things, do you think? Or your credit card even? I don't know the real answer, but it's quite a bit. What they put on this thing, and you put it into the card reader at the ATM, and then you've got to match the PIN number. Can you change the PIN number of your bank card? Can you? The PIN number is hashed on the magnetic strip, so that when you put the PIN into the keypad, and I think they're pretty weak. There's what, 4 characters? At least mine's 4 characters. Pretty weak, but there's something that you have, the card, and something that you know, the PIN number. And it compares the hash that's put in from the keypad to the hash that's on the card. If the two match, then we get the empty Sam's checking account.
Good luck with that.
Well, you know, every little bit counts, huh?
You might be able to buy it.
Half a zero, still zero.
Half a zero, still zero. All the zeros still zero, isn't it? So we're hashing, and this is one of the things that a hash does. It's considered secure if it has these characteristics. That cipher text hash is a fixed size. 2 different sets of data cannot produce the same hash. This is known as a collision. There is an attack that is based upon the fact that you may have the same hash produced by 2 different data streams, and that's called a birthday attack. When you see that birthday attack, it says that they may have the 2 different pieces of data may produce the same hash. Hopefully that's not going to happen. If it does, it'd be a collision. Huh?
If the 2 was from the same initialization vector or something?
Well, that was the problem with WEP. And the problem with WEP was that, so they had like 5 million. To me, 5 million sounds like a lot, doesn't it? But it's not if you're changing that every data packet. That you actually did get the same initialization vector and 2 different datas, so that would allow you to then back that up and crack it. Should be impossible to reproduce the data set as a desired or predefined hash. So when we talk about cracking passwords, what did you see in the passwords when you did can't enable? I know the plain text ones, you saw the plain text, but in the NTLM passwords, what did you see? Say hexadecimal, you saw the hash. What does a brute force attack do to a hash? It tries to reproduce all the possibilities of the hash, all the possible combinations, until it finds part of the hash that matches. Say, I got this part of the password, and it keeps going until it finds another part of the hash. So what it's doing is creating this hash in multiple passes. Why is rainbow table so much quicker? Because they're already there. They've already produced the hash table, so all it has to do is do the comparisons. How long does it take to produce the hash tables? A long time. How long does it take to download the hash tables if you can find them? Several days, but they are there, but they're already there. So instead of having to produce the hashes one at a time, to do the comparison, to do the comparison after it produces the hashes already produced, all it has to do is the comparison. That's why it is much faster. The resulting hash ciphertext can't be reversed, but it can be reproduced. If we use the same algorithm and the same character string, are we going to get the same hash? You have to. Otherwise, how would hashing passwords work? Windows uses Kerberos. What does it send? Does it send the password? It sends a hash. The password part of the hash. And it sends the hash to the server. The server then uses the same conditions to create a hash to see if the two match. If they do, you get authenticated. If they don't, you don't get authenticated. So the hash serves as a check to verify the message contents itself. And this is the you are hired and you are fired kind of thing. You are hired, we get a hash algorithm. You are hired produces a hash 5409835. And again, this is the things that I just love, these really short numbers. I'm going to show you a hash here in a second. You are fired. Well, the hashes don't match. So my appointment hasn't been moved from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock. Then, like Michael said, call and check on it. And that's absolutely right. Did somebody change something? You ever see these? We got the MD5 posted along with the document.
Yep.
Here's the document. Here's the MD5 hash. I knew a guy that infected a whole room in this building because he said, oh, it had an MD5 hash. I said, well, did you check it? I said, what? What good does that do you? What's that hash good for? If it's just there and you download the document and you don't check to be sure that the hash is the same. Does the hash, the MD5 hash, do you any good? How do you know that it didn't get changed if somebody didn't insert a virus, if somebody didn't change it en route? There are some softwares that allow you to do these things. And I think MD5 Sum, and there's some activities that you do in the book to do those. I think one of them is MD5 Sum, one of them is MD5 Sum, will allow you to check documents. You can actually check your whole hard drive. How would you know if you've been invaded? Well, if the hash of the drive changes, the problem I think with Windows is it changes so much that it's always going to be some issues. But what if you have a folder that things don't change a whole lot in? You could hash that. You can hash a document. You can send the hash, post the hash, do whatever else, so that when whoever gets the document can get the hash, run the MD5 sum against the document to see if, in fact, it's the same hash. If it's different, then something's changed. And that's part of what the MD5 and the Ch11 attachments that go along with emails can do for you. How do we find that out? The question usually is, if I send an email and I send the hash along with it, why don't I just change the hash if I change the email? Because the hash is usually encrypted, part of the system. Hashing algorithms, and these are just posted. This is what one would look like. If we have this download here and an MD5 checksum, the MD5 hash, the Ch11 hash, and they're going to tell you in the book that MD5 does have some weaknesses. Ch11 is the one that's preferred. Can you have a whole lot of control over which hashing algorithm that you use in the real world? If we're creating a tunnel between two Cisco routers, you can pick which hashing algorithm you want to use, either MD5 or Ch11. But they have to be supported by the operating system. So you can't just say, oh, I want to use this one or not that one, if it's not supported in that operating system. So hashing algorithms, the confidentiality to do anything for us? No. Integrity, yes, and you go down this list, and integrity is what hashing algorithms do for us. They provide the integrity of it. The message digest algorithm is a common hash algorithm, 3 versions, MD2, 4, and 5. MD5 is the current one. All the other ones are much weaker. Secure hash algorithms, more secure than the MD algorithm, the message digest, and it is a family of hashes Ch11 patterned after MD4, but creates a hash that's 160 bits instead of 128 bits. Ch2, getting 256 bits, 384 bits, or 512 bits, is considered to be a secure hash if you use this one. Whirlpool, a relatively new hash function. And they say that it's received international recognition, creates a hash of 512 bits. I haven't, and I'm not saying it's not there, but I haven't in the labs that I've done for Cisco or Microsoft creating these things that require hashes, haven't seen this show up in any of the softwares yet. Doesn't mean that it's not there or it won't be there. It just means that I haven't seen it yet. Password hashes, we talked about that, and that's another use of these things. Passwords sent from one account to the other. Then we want to do that with a hash. The LM hash, LAN manager hash, and NTLM hash. The LM hash is considered weak. It is weak, much easier to crack than the NTLM or the Kerberos hash. Remember, Kerberos is used to authenticate to a domain controller. It's not used for everything in the Windows world. Most Linux systems use password hashing algorithms such as MD5. The Linux systems use a salt in the password, a random character string that goes with it. The reason they do that is so that if I take the password file from the Linux machine and try to crack it from someplace else, I don't have the salt. So it makes it much more difficult, nearly impossible to do that. Apple uses SHA-1 hashes. What I want to do, and then we'll take a break, is show you what a hash looks like. Because we talk about these things and say, oh, we get this or we get that. Hash demo, I can't make this any bigger. You can get it. I'll make it available. If I type something like, now is the time for action, and I'm not going to put a period at the end of it. Let's do the 128-bit hash. Creates a fixed length character string. I'm going to change it here in a second. A SHA-1 160-bit hash, character strength longer. Randomness. Are any of the characters the same? If I go back to 128-bit, I always look at the end. This is BCE3. If I go back here and hash it, it's F91FC. Different algorithms. So the hashes are going to be different. Let's go over here to the 256-bit hash. Much longer string. It's going to take you a lot longer to try to reproduce everything in that hash. And we talked about what's the hash good for? We use it for passwords, obviously, but what we're trying to do is to assure the integrity of the message. Let's do something really simple. Let's put a period at the end of this thing. Just correct the grammar sort of deal. The easiest thing, and again, you can look at all these things, try to remember all this. The last four characters are C736. Let's rehash this thing. Wow. By just putting a period in the document, it changed the whole hash. So what are the odds of having two hashes being the same? I don't think that they're really big. Having a collision, being able to effectively carry out a birthday attack, don't know the real answer to those. But the hashes change dramatically with just any minor change. And that goes from uppercase to lowercase. Let's change the A from uppercase to lowercase and do a hash. Changes the hash. So any change in the message is going to result in the hashes not matching. So the next time you see those MD5 hashes on those files that you're downloading, can you check to be sure that the file is the one that the user thinks they posted? Now, if they posted it with a virus in it, it's still going to have the virus in it. But you need to get something like MD5 sum and check it. There are a number of them if you just search for them out there that you can get, that you can produce a hash from a file to see if there have been any changes in it. Let's take a break. Let me resume this. I'm going to try to do an encryption. Let's just go to the, you can, and part of it is encrypt the window, and again, this is a lab that I will want you to do, is do it, to get this, install this, and do an encrypted email. But quickly, let's go to the clipboard. Let's empty the clipboard, get rid of what's there, and go to edit, and let's type in something like, this is it. It's really kind of silly. Copy to the clipboard. And then let's encrypt the clipboard. What I have to do is pick a key to encrypt it with. And then encryption in this one is called a web of trust, but if we have public key, private key, I would encrypt with a public key and decrypt with a private key. If I had symmetric keys, I would encrypt and decrypt with the same key, and we'll talk about how we get symmetric keys to work to our advantage in a little bit. But let's say the recipient is this guy here. And now let's go back to the clipboard, see if it's made a mess out of me. This is what the encrypted message looks like for it. This is it. Now Sam wants me to try to decrypt it, and let's see if I can, because I encrypted it with my own key. And I don't know that this is actually going to work for me or not. Clipboard, sign, encrypt, decrypt, and verify. Oh yeah. You have to remember your passphrase, and there it is, decrypted. There's my plain text back from that gibberish that was there.
So it takes 8 letters and turns it into 8.
Whatever that is, it turned it into that whole big mess. It's a two-way process. Encrypt, what can be encrypted can be decrypted. What did I have to decrypt it? If I had the private key, that made it a whole lot easier, and in this case, the passphrase. The passphrase is actually the thing that helps in creating the keys as you do those things. So encryption, decryption, and you notice when I rebooted this thing, I've got my little lock down here. Passphrases are cached. This is what I was looking for. The process is actually started on this thing. It allows me to do encryption and decryption with it. When you do the lab, you're going to have to find my public key to do the encryption, since we now have determined that I have my private key, so I'll be able to decrypt the things that you send me. Symmetric cryptographic algorithms use the same single key to encrypt and decrypt a message called a private key. That's what I'd use, you probably use for your wireless access point. A pre-shared key that you know and you share with your friends. And if you use WEP, you can maybe try to crack it. It's illegal, but so I don't recommend that you do those things. But private key cryptography. Private key cryptography, you have to slow down with those words, is much faster, takes fewer resources than public key cryptography. Stream, we're going to have stream ciphers and block ciphers. A stream cipher takes one character at a time and replaces it with one character. It's kind of like it's encrypting a stream of data as it goes across this thing. Substitution cipher is the simplest cipher. They've got a picture in the book, one letter or character for another. One of the simplest, probably easiest to demonstrate substitution cipher would be if you go type something in Microsoft Word and then change it to wingdings, because you just get a bunch of stuff. That is it's a substitution cipher. It's not a very good substitution cipher, but is it a substitution cipher?
Could you like write the alphabet out regular and then write it out in reverse?
Yeah, then you would have a key, wouldn't you? Then you would have a key. Yep. And that could be a substitution cipher. Anything can be a substitution cipher. What's the problem with a substitution cipher?
It can be figured out.
It can be figured out because it's going to create a pattern of some kind. Especially if you get some cipher text and some plain text, how hard is it to figure it out? That's one of the issues with these things. So in this, the key, the identical keys, the private key, symmetric cryptography uses the same key for the encryption and the decryption. It's going to be faster, and it can be up to 1,000 times quicker to use symmetric key cryptography instead of asymmetric key cryptography. This is, and I think this is the one, this is just the stream cipher. And this is the one that you were talking about, Chris. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, Z, Y, X, I can't do it backwards, but plain text has got a ciphertext, and it's not using this cipher, obviously, but my name is Bob, I think is using it, isn't it? What's B? Is Y now. They use a different, what they used is the one that they show in the book for this one, which uses a different character each time the character is used. The first time the character is used, actually I did that wrong, didn't I? My M. Yeah, this is this one. My M translates to 0, OB. Y translates to B. My name is Bob with this substitution cipher. Transposition cipher, more complicated, rearranges letters without actually changing them. Most symmetric ciphers, the final step is to combine the cipher string with the plain text to create a ciphertext. Process is accomplished through an exclusive or an XOR binary operation. One-time pad is the one-time keys that you see. This one actually uses, and you notice we got the first A, which is AAO, and then the second A, which is RHR in here. This keeps track of things, and the number of times the letters used actually uses a different character string as a substitution for each time the letter, that particular letter is used. And I think this could get really big if you think about it, if you had a very big document, unless you just started reusing this thing. So how are you going to do these things? This is an XOR process. What an XOR process really means is that bits are different, the result is 1. If the bits are the same, the result is 0. It's kind of like ANDing in subnetting, but a little bit different. Because in ANDing we had a 0 and a 0, we got a 0. We had a 0 in anything, we got a 0. In this case, the OR, and this is always going to be true in an OR, a 1 or 0 is a 1. If we had two 1s, and if you go over here, we get two 1s, we get a 0. And this time, anytime the bits are the same, you get a 0 in the XOR process to create the ciphertext. So it goes through a number of steps in order to do that. A block cipher manipulates an entire block of text at the same time. Divided into separate blocks of 8 to 16 bytes, and then each block is encrypted independently. Stream cipher advantages and disadvantages. It's fast when the plain text is short, but the longer you get, the more complex it's going to be, more prone to attack because the engine that generates the stream does not vary. It's always going to have the same character, like Chris was talking about, the ABC and the Z, whatever the X, Y, Z, ZY, ZYW, whatever it is. Backwards, huh? I can't say the alphabet backwards. I have a hard enough time going forwards.
Yeah, I think the correct answer is seriously. And the people who actually try it don't.
Yeah. Symmetric block cipher advantages and disadvantages. More secure because the output is random. The cipher is reset its original state after each block is processed. So it starts over again. Results in the ciphertext are more difficult to break. Symmetric algorithm gives us confidentiality, integrity, availability, and the availability here is it's available only to the people that have the key to get that information decrypted. Authenticity and non-repudiation doesn't do us any favors with, any good with. DES, symmetric, and again, for the Network Plus, I think if you actually memorize the asymmetric, because there are fewer of them, then everything else is symmetric. Because there are only two things. There's only one of two answers. It's either symmetric or asymmetric. Can you think of a third one? Got to be one or the other. DES, one of the first popular ones, it's a block cipher, encrypts data in 64-bit blocks. The 8-bit parity bit is ignored, so it effectively has a key length of 56 bits. And going back to the little hash demo, 56 bits not going to be all that secure. It's going to be of lesser quality. And the question that Sam asked, can you encrypt the encrypted data? Exactly. That's what triple DES does, 3DES does. It uses the DES algorithm, but it encrypts the data 3 times. You can either use the same key or 3 different keys. Obviously, with 3 different keys, it's going to be more secure. So designated to replace DES uses 3 rounds of encryption instead of just the 1. They tried DES2 and found out it really wasn't any more secure than DES. But when they encrypted it 3 times, it became logarithmically more secure. So triple DES was the one that they used. And this is a table. This is in the book with the DES modes. Yes.
And that doesn't create a whole lot of latency having to run
No.
through that many.
No. Well, no. But any kind of encryption, the more encryption we do, the slower the process is going to be.
But it's not like so bad that it's not viable.
No. And actually, triple DES is still one of the more popular ones. AES is the preferred method now because it has a bigger key and it is still considered secure. Triple DES is not considered secure because the algorithm's been cracked. Confidential memo, this is the algorithm 1, 2, and 3, and this one uses 3 different keys. You can do it either way. 3 different keys obviously is going to be more secure than using a single key. What you do is encrypt the encrypted. It's really kind of strange. AES, approved by NIST in the late 2000s, replacement for DES, performs 3 steps on every block, 128 bits of plain text. Within step 2, multiple rounds are performed depending upon the key size. Within each round, bytes are substituted and rearranged, and then a special multiplication is performed based on the new arrangement. So this is the one that they actually had a contest that people submitted encryption algorithms, and this is the one that won those contests. Some of the others are out there like Blowfish, and Blowfish has been improved with part of that. So it's there. This has gone through testing. It's still considered a secure algorithm. How long it'll be secure, who knows. Other ones, Reverse Cipher RC1 through 6, IDEA, Blowfish, and Twofish. Twofish is an improved version of Blowfish. Asymmetric, public key cryptography, public key, private key. It's going to be more secure because we don't have to say, hey, Devin, here's the key. Don't tell Monty. Monty's sitting there listening, saying, oh, I got the key now. How long can you keep a secret a secret? Until one person knows it, then it's not a secret anymore, is it? For real? And that's been the whole thing about the symmetric key. Public key uses 2 keys, the public key and the private key. Public key is known to everyone and can be freely distributed. Is freely distributed. It's public because who has it? The public has it. Everybody has it. Public key. Private key known only to the recipient, and when we do the key export, the private key is the one you need to export and keep it private. Because if you lose control of the private key, you've lost control of your encryption. In the public key, private key, public key known to everybody, that's what we do the encryption with. The little demo that I just did. I encrypted with the public key. When I decrypted it, in this particular piece of software, I had to put in my the key string known only to me to reproduce this thing. That makes it a little bit more better. Can be used to create an actual digital signature. These things can be. So what we use here, different keys. We've got Alice's public key and Alice's private key. Bob uses Alice's public key to encrypt the information. When you do the lab that I'm going to ask you to do next week for PGP, you're going to have to find my public key at pgp.mit.edu. That's pretty easy, right? You put it on your key ring. Why don't you go through the process to see how these things actually work? So Bob uses Alice's public key to encrypt the information. We'll get the ciphertext. And again, don't you love these little short ciphertexts? Now you know, kind of have an idea of what a ciphertext really looks like. We just did the demonstration. Transmitted the ciphertext to the decryption algorithm. Alice uses Alice's private key to decrypt. The public key and the private key come from the same source, but they are different. Public keys can only encryption public keys, and because I'd say when we use a signature, I'm using the public key to sign it, or excuse me, the private key to sign it with, and you can decrypt it with the public key because you want everybody to know who it came from. Different key, that's a signing key. This is an encryption key. The encryption key, the public key can only encrypt. The private key is used to decrypt the data. Because you say, hey, Bob encrypts this thing, I'll just use the public key to decrypt it. The public key can't be used to decrypt. Only the private key can be used for that. Digital signature, verify the sender. Prove the integrity of the message because the digital signature actually does use the text part of it in a hashing algorithm in order to produce the signature, in order to validate the signature. Prevent the sender from disowning the message. If I send you a signed email, it's kind of tough for me to say, no, I didn't, unless I have lost control of my private key and didn't ask the issuer to revoke the key. If you lose your private key, the first thing you should do is have it revoked. And they'll always have a way for you to do that. And they revoke them pretty quickly. I experienced that when I got a signing certificate and didn't say, hey, I want to be able to export my private key, which means I can only use it on that one machine. Look at those things and kind of pay attention if you get one so that you have the ability to export your private key. That way you can take it from one computer to the other. I didn't, and I asked them how I could do that. So the only thing is to revoke it and request it again. And you can't, in these guys, you can only, for one email address, you can get one signing certificate. So once they revoked it, I could get another one. So the confidential memo, layoffs, we'll get the hash algorithm. The hash here goes through the encryption algorithm. We have a digital signature on it. And we have the confidential memo here is transmitted, and this one is Bob's private key here is used to create the digital signature. Go through here, and we use Bob's public key to say, yes, Bob sent this thing. And this is the only time that the public-private reversal makes any sense, doesn't it? Would you want to encrypt an email with your private key? If you encrypted it with your private key, who could decrypt it? Huh? How about only somebody had your? Only somebody had your? Who has your public key? Everybody. So if you encrypt it with your private key, who could read it? Everybody, because they all have your public key. If I encrypt it with the public key, who can read it?
Anybody with your private key.
Anybody with a private key, was hopefully just me. That's why control your private key is really a big deal as you do these things. And you can sign this thing, but how would we want to sign it? Who do we want to know that we signed this email? The receiver. How is the receiver going to find that out? What if I send it to 300 people? What if I send it to 1,000 people? Which key would make more sense to look at the signature? The public key. So I sign with the private key, and you have the public key say, oh yeah, I'm the one that actually signed that message. And that goes, and then we get back to, can I now disavow it? I just sent this email to 1,000 people. No, because I signed it. Well, say, oh, James stole my private key, and he sent it. It's his fault. And this is back to, should people, at least in certain positions in the company, have signed emails? So that if you get something from HR that's whatever, that you know it's from them. What if you get something and a favorite for social engineering is, we're here from IT. Oh, we need your credentials to do this. And yes, in the not too distant past, there have been people in this organization fell for that. People at high levels in the organization fell for that. If there had been digital signatures, could you fake the fact that you're from ECPI's IT? Not if you didn't have the signature for the email address that it's coming from. So that's something really to consider. You can look at this thing, action, whose key to use, go through this table. When do you use which key? Asymmetric encryption, confidentiality gives us a little bit of everything. Confidentiality, integrity, availability, authenticity, and non-repudiation. Non-repudiation based on the digital signature of it. These are some of the algorithms. RSA, most common asymmetric algorithm, multiplies two large prime numbers, P and Q, to compute their product, N equal PQ, so that when you do these things, each of them uses one or the other one, and I think there's a little demo on the Moodle page that I found at some university where you can produce those things and it will produce the product. Number chosen is less than n and a prime factor to p minus 1 and q minus 1, and it goes through a whole bunch of, here's your math, Sam, a whole bunch of math, so that what really happens is one of them has one of them and one of them has the other, and when you do a product, you get the same number. Kind of like Diffie-Hellman uses the public key, private key combination. Diffie-Hellman, secure key exchange, what does it do? I send you my public key, you have your private key. You send me your public key, I have my private key. When we combine the two, we're going to get a common key string, a common symmetric key string, so that we've now used the public key encryption system using the Diffie-Hellman doesn't encrypt anything. Diffie-Hellman just does the key exchange to produce for us a symmetric key so that we can be 1,000 times faster.
What do you call that?
What? Diffie-Hellman?
Diffie-Hellman?
Hellman.
Hellman. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's that big picture on your Moodle page. It says Diffie-Hellman key exchange. Huh? Isn't that what it says it does? Public keys exchange? And you use the two of them to produce a private key. Why do we want a private key? Why do we want to be able to use a private key? Why don't we just use the public key, private key? Because everybody has it. It takes a lot more time. It takes a lot more resources to use public key encryption than it does to use symmetric key encryption. How does an HTTPS site work? Does it use public key or private key?
Should be private, right?
Should be private. How does it do that? Huh? HTTPS port. And golly, we both just miraculously make up the same private key. It's a good guess. It's a good guess, and I think I heard James say it, but I ignored him. How about both? How about both? Adam's right also. I made fun of him, now he's right. You're right too. But how do we make up that private key so that we both have the same private key? When you go to an HTTPS site, assuming there's nothing wrong with the public key, what happens? It sends you its public key. That's okay, because who can have the public key? Everybody. So it sends you the public key. Everybody's got the public key. Big deal, right? What does your system do? Your system generates a symmetric key, encrypts the symmetric key with the public key of the website, and sends it back. who can now decrypt this encrypted private key? The HTTPS holder, the website, because it's the one with the private key. It then decrypts the private key that you sent it, and you use, as Adam said, the symmetric key in order to encrypt the data. How long is that key good for? That session. When you hang up, the key is supposed to be destroyed at both ends. So when I say that the 256-bit encryption's been cracked, yes. Took a supercomputer 4 months, yes. What'd they get? Session key. What's it good for, that session? Maybe be able to get your social security number, but hopefully not mine. And then you encrypt the data for that particular session. Most of those data thefts, I think, actually come from the databases themselves. Diffie-Hellman, Chris, allows two users to share a secret key securely over a public network. And that's what we want to be able to do. Do we want to use the public key, private key in order to do the actual encryption and the decryption with? No, because it takes up to 1,000 times more resources. Much quicker to use symmetric keys. But what's the problem with symmetric keys? Getting them there secretly. Keeping them a secret. Tell Sam so that everybody knows. Once the key's been shared, then both parties can use it to encrypt and decrypt the messages using the symmetric encryption. So the Diffie-Hellman, the picture on the Moodle page, and it basically, I send you my public key, you send me your public key. We do a combination of your public key and my private key, and you do a combination of my public key and your private key, and we're going to come up with the resulting symmetric key that we can encrypt the data with. HTTPS a little bit differently. The website sends you its public key. Your system creates a symmetric key, encrypts it with the public key, sends it back to the website. You now use that key for that session. Elliptical curve cryptography uses elliptical curves. It is there. I don't know how widely it's used. What happens here is, and they've got a picture of an ellipse in the book, they use two different points on the ellipse in order to get the numbers that they need. The 2 points on the curve, you can arrive at a third point on the curve. Public aspect of the elliptical curve crypto system is that users share an elliptical curve and 1 point on the curve. Cryptography on files and disks can also be used to protect large numbers of files or an entire disk. PGP has the ability to do that. Does anybody remember, and it was really a low-level story in the news, that somebody was coming across the Canadian border multiple months ago with a laptop that the Immigration Service suspected had child pornography on it. It was an encrypted disk. And I think, based on the stories, was encrypted with PGP. So how do you now prove that this guy is transporting child pornography into the country? Huh? Should try to decrypt it. Demand is private key. Can you do that?
You have a warrant.
Think so?
You still don't have to give it up.
Still don't have to give it up. The court said no. They couldn't decrypt it. I don't know if they actually ever did get it decrypted, but said they could try to decrypt it, but they can't force him to give up the private key. PGP, the one that I keep talking about, and they talk about in the next chapter, was originally designed to protect people emailing in countries that had brutal dictators. That their emails were being intercepted and they were using their own emails to prosecute them. That's why it was originally open source. There's now at pgp.com. There's a company that sells it. Also still a free version. It's pretty darn secure.
PGP was the one that explained that. That's what I
That what?
PGP
plain text. PGP is the one that I just demonstrated with. That was PGP. Now, it's actually pretty secure. We'll talk about it. I'll get ahead of myself. It's what's called, we have public key and private key. We've talked about that. Public key, private key, sharing, and then symmetric key, a shared key. PGP is what's called a web of trust. Because I'm going to tell you to go get my public key. You trust that it's really my public key. And I tell you to go get it. I have to have it. If I were sending you an email, I would have to have your public key. If you're sending me an email, you have to have my public key. So that we build key rings with all of these keys on it. And you saw when I did that demonstration that there were some other keys there. And I used my own key, since I have both the public and the private key, in order to encrypt it. And when I encrypted with the public key, I could decrypt it with the private key. But when I tried to decrypt it, it asked me a question, didn't it? It asked me what my passcode was, key string, whatever they call it. I had to know that in order to effect the decryption. So that was PGP that I was using there. So cryptography can protect disks, and it also has a wipe capability. You know, when you delete a disk, you delete a file, really does a great job, right? Changes the first character to a $ sign or something like that. That's recoverable. Huh?
The tilde symbol.
Yeah, that's right, it's the tilde symbol. PGP has a wipe operation that's supposed to wipe the file to the point that the people with all the high-powered software can't get it back. File systems, the store and retrieval, we know that. PGP, the one I've been talking about, one of the most widely used asymmetric cryptography systems, public key, private key, for files and email messages on the Windows systems. And it will encrypt files, it will encrypt emails. It will encrypt, it will encrypt text documents, obviously, because I could have taken any text document, copied that to my clipboard, encrypted the information, copied it back to a text document, and kept it in that text box, send it to you. If I encrypted it with your public key and send it to you encrypted, then you decrypt it with your private key. And you'll get the plain text. GNU Privacy Guard GPG is an open source program that's similar to PGP. PGP, again, is not open source, but it is free. When you go to download it, they'll give you a 30-day version that works really, really cool automatically. After the 30 days, it still works. It's just not as automatic as it used to be, unless they've changed it since the last time I got it. The Windows encrypting file system works effectively, got a pretty bad reputation up front. They've made some changes to it. It was one of the ones that had a predictable initial vector. Actually, a random number. The random numbers were predictable, so it made it less effective, obviously. What it does, when it encrypts the file, it does a thing similar to what we're talking about. The system creates a symmetric key. It then encrypts the symmetric key and stores it in the document, so that when you want to decrypt your document, the first thing you do is decrypt the key, and then the symmetric key is used to decrypt the document. If I wanted to have a recovery agent, which is always a good idea, because if you get hit by a bus, and I know nobody wants to get by a bus, and you're in the hospital for 6 weeks and somebody really wants to decrypt the payroll file, then you may want a recovery agent. What it does, if you have a recovery agent, it encrypts the key with their key also, so that the recovery agent can also decrypt the document. But the symmetric keys for these things are stored in the document itself, but they're encrypted. Same thing we were talking about earlier. In order to use symmetric keys, we create the symmetric keys and encrypt them with a public-private key arrangement. If you do encrypted file system, you will find in your key set an EFS key. Export that thing. Because Chris asked the question, if I change my password, if you change your password, you're okay. If I reset your password, I may lose this thing. What if I reset your password and you can't find your key anymore? How do you get it back? As long as you got a copy of it, all you have to do is import it. Same key. You now own that key. Please, when you get these things, make copies of them. Because if you lose them, you have some really cool encrypted data that's really, really encrypted. It's really, really secure. Well, yes, you do. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I can tell you a system, an instance that it wouldn't have been that you forgot your password. What if you got hit by that bus and you're in a hospital and we need into your account? You got amnesia. You're in ICU and you can't talk. What are we going to do to get to your files? Administrator goes in and resets your password. We can get to everything except your encrypted files. Now you come back to work. And golly, I want to get to my encrypted files. Well, I'll reset your password. If you don't have that private key, the password, in order to import that key, then all that encrypted data is probably going to be history, unless you spend a lot of time trying to crack it. Huh? Don't have that much. But you may eventually. Disk cryptography, the whole disk, we can encrypt the entire disk. BitLocker does that for Windows, something that was introduced with Vista.
That guy probably was up to no good if he had his entire disk.
Yes, very likely, and that may have been why they suspect him. I don't know why they suspect him, very likely. But I really wish that when those kids had stolen my private information, that it had been encrypted. I wish that whole disk had been encrypted. I bet James does too. And anybody else that was involved in that. You probably got one too, didn't you, Monty? Did you get one, Will? A letter from when all that information got stolen?
I think that was before my time.
Okay, could be. That's a big deal. How many flash drives do you use? How many times do you see this? They lost all this information on a flash drive. How could you prevent them losing all that information? Well, I'd want to think, but what if you encrypt the data? What if you encrypt the data? How useful is that information with encrypted data? Encryption can help a lot. Whole disk, partial disk, file, directory, whatever else. But data encryption, if you've got stuff on your own laptop that you don't want to be public, if you've got child pornography, you probably want to encrypt it. Sam's going to encrypt his games. Trusted Platform Module, this is part of the BitLocker. Trusted Platform Module actually uses the BIOS. And go back to the question, how do you know that Chinese aren't doing stuff to the BIOS? It's because that's where a lot of this stuff's built. I mean, the whole thing goes around and around. Who can you trust and who can't you trust? At some point, you've got to trust somebody at least part of the way. So what goes on with this thing? A chip on the motherboard of the computer provides cryptographic services for these things. If you don't have that chip, you can use a flash drive with the passwords on it. Then you have to have the flash drive in order to actually boot the system. You can do that. You can measure and test the key components as the computer is starting up. Computer doesn't support the hardware-based TPM. The encryption keys for securing the data on the hard drive can be stored by BitLocker on a USB flash drive. So if you have the Vista or Windows 7 and you want to do this and you don't have a machine that has the Trusted Platform Module, you can use a flash drive in order to store the keys to do that. Cryptography is a lot of fun, isn't it? So what is it, and how do we use it, and what can it be used for? I mean, really, what it really is taking stuff that we can read and making it into a form of stuff we can't read. Hopefully think about some of the things. How do you know who it came from? How can you do that? Windows Office, Windows Word and Excel and those things have the ability to allow you to digitally sign the documents. And if you digitally sign the document, send it to somebody, and they make a change to it, it takes your signature off. So that you can actually have digitally signed documents that you send from one to the other. It says, hey, yeah, they really did send it. It goes back to authenticity and non-repudiation. Yes, I really did create this thing, and yes, I really did send it. So we can do a lot with it. Hashing, we looked at hash. Hash is just a random string of characters. Any change to the document changes the hash. When we send a digest along with the document, the digest is actually the hash of the document. What keeps you from changing the digest when you change the document? We encrypt the hash. We encrypt the hash, the message digest hash, so that you can't do those things. And if you're downloading these things and you have an MD5 or a SHA hash, get a piece of software where after you've downloaded the document, run it through there, MD5 sum, to see if the hash is the same. If it's changed, something changed in the document. Asymmetric keys and symmetric keys, cryptography, we really want to use symmetric keys much faster. Now we talked about how we exchange symmetric keys, exchange the information so that we can securely have the same symmetric key in two locations without actually exposing the key. I went to a course one time and I got kind of disenchanted with this particular group. So I don't understand how you do that. And the instructor didn't understand how you do that either. He said, oh, just for an instant there, the private key is exposed. The private key is never exposed. How do we get there? How do we get there? Two different ways. The Diffie-Hellman, by exchanging the two public keys and using our private keys in combination with the other person's public key, and also the HTTPS, where we use the public key to encrypt the symmetric key and send it back. So there's a couple of different ways to get the symmetric keys securely to the new location. Are there questions? All right, everybody. What I'd like to do here is to show you how to import and export a key using Internet Explorer. You can also use the key manager, MMC, in the Windows system. There is a key manager in there. If you go to the MMC, you can manage your keys that way. But this is probably the quickest to do with anything. Tools, the Internet options, content, have my certificates. I don't have any personal certificates. I just downloaded one from my storage location that I have, and I put it into downloads, and there's nothing here. This is for a certificate itself. The PFX file, which I hope is there, I'll put it in, maybe I put it in documents. Now I gotta find it. Downloads, the PFX file. This is a signing certificate for my Skyline account, if I did find it. This is one that once I got it, I exported it to a storage location to keep it secure. And we can open this thing next, and as James said, you got to put a password in once you export your private key. Now then, the question is, do I remember it? Looks like it worked. Place them in the following store. This is going to, you can specify one or just let it take the defaults. I usually just let it take the defaults. The import was successful. Now I have this key in here, and I can view the key, what it's for in the details, and we keep talking about this public key, and this is using RSA. I know it's hard to see from back there, but if you look at this thing using a 2048-bit key to do this with. You can look at these things or whatever else, but that's the extent of the complexity with importing a key. If I wanted to export this key, I go back to the certificates. click on the key, export, next. No, don't export the private key. It's not giving me that option in this one, probably because I messed up the import. Whatever code we want to use and on down, and then it will export it. You pick a location, we'll export it to a file. Not a real complex situation, but you gotta have the key in order to do that. And as James said, remember the password of the key so that if it becomes lost, deleted, ineffective, you can import it. You're gonna have to have the password in order to do that. You can get signing certificates at Komodo.com for free. They issue them for a year. You may want to consider doing those. Try your server out, see if you can send it. My problem is I can send signed emails all day long inside the eCPI to all the local people. I can send it, but when I try to send it outside, the last time I checked, it gets stopped. I'm sure at the firewall because it's saying it's an enclosure. It's an attachment that it doesn't like. Questions about that? Going once, going twice.